Imperialism, part three, informal imperialism. This is when you don't take complete control of a country, but you kind of take over maybe their economic part. So, and that's really what happens in China. And in this picture right here, you have a picture of what's called an opium bar, which we'll get to. So, informal imperialism, even in areas where they did not establish direct rule, where they took over the country and government entirely, European powers often dominated an area's economy. Historians refer to this as informal imperialism. European powers and China. So, in China, European powers faced a different situation than in India and Africa. For thousands of years, the Chinese had been united under its powerful emperors. Nevertheless, China had remained isolated from the world. When you isolate yourself, you lose all new innovations and technology and things like that. So by the 1830s, it lacked military technology. It needed to oppose Western imperialism. So even though they invented the crossbow, invented the gun, they were now behind because they had cut themselves off from the rest of the world. So Western nations showed an interest in China because of its huge population. So the more people you have, more people you can sell things to. This offered a potential market for European manufactured goods. So it also possessed valuable raw materials and produced local goods sought by Europeans. In China, European powers therefore developed a system called informal imperialism. China's local rulers remained in power, but they became subject to foreign pressure. So the British would put pressure on these guys get uh, to get treated better than anybody else should. They'd have good treaties and they would kind of have control of different areas. And what you see in the picture is different countries kind of swooping in and, chopping apart, taking apart China. And China seen as the dragon, Britain seen as the lion, Russia as the bear, and the United States here in the back with the eagle. So the Opium Wars. So in the 1800s, Great Britain began selling opium in China to obtain money to buy tea. Kind of a strange thing. And the government of China tried to stop this by sentencing Chinese opium dealers to death. So guys who were selling drugs, opium is a drug, were sentenced to death. The British got upset. The British wanted these guys to keep selling. So the British reacted by declaring war. Due to its military superiority, the British defeated the Chinese and forced them to continue to sell opium. So the British came in and forced the Chinese drug dealers to continue to sell opium. So this damaged the Chinese economy and created chaos and political instability in China. So, if you have 30% of your population that is hooked on this opium drug, it just kind of wipes out your whole country. So, China was also forced to open up several treaty ports, giving the British new trading privileges. This is part of that informal imperialism. So, the British established several spheres of influence, and these are areas of China under exclusive economic control of the British or another country that came in and took over. And you see the different countries that took over: Russia, Japan, Germany, Britain, and France. They own these areas. All of them are along the coast, so it makes it easier to actually bring your ships in and trade. So a flood of cheap British textiles came in to hurt the Chinese. This should be Chinese industry, just like it did in India. And other European countries soon followed the British example, demanding their own spheres of influence in China. So, increasing European interference was extremely unpopular in China, just like it was in India, and weakened the prestige of the ruling Manchu dynasty, the Qing dynasty, however you want to say it, but they were kind of seen as weak. So, the defeat of the Chinese army in the Opium Wars proved that the Chinese were no longer the heavenly Middle Kingdom. So, it kind of woke up the population that, hey, we are not the greatest empire in the world anymore. So Manchu rulers uh, faced a series of major revolts, and millions of Chinese were killed in China's rebellion rulers put down the Taipei Rebellion, and this is with the help of Europeans. So it's kind of a strange thing. The ruler of China actually got help from the Europeans to put down a revolt against his own people. So America's open door policy. Fearing it would be shut out of China's profitable trade, the United States proposed equal trading rights for all nations in China. So they're not really saving China, but what they're saying is everybody has a chance to come in and make money off the Chinese population. And this picture over here on the left is a good example. What you have is the different countries dividing up China like it's a pie or a pizza. And this leads to the Boxer Rebellion. It has nothing to do with boxing. So a Chinese group calling themselves the Boxers rebelled against the spread of foreign influence in China. Hundreds of foreigners living in Chinese cities were killed during the riots by the Boxers and their supporters. An international force composed of troops from foreign powers finally came in and put down the Boxer Rebellion. And here's a good picture of the different troops that served to fight against the Boxers. And this is a British soldier. This is a U.S. soldier. This would be a sepoy. This is a German. It could either one of these could be German and Italian. And here's a Japanese soldier. So you had different countries that sent troops in to put down the Boxer Rebellion. The United States played a key role in suppressing the rebellion because we used our ships that were docked in the Philippines, which we owned at that time, to come in and put down the Boxer Rebellion. So, however, the United States did kind of save China in the end, and they let it stay its own country rather than being divided up and completely taken over by the Europeans. So, American policy prevented European powers from further dividing up China and kept it open to trade with all nations. All right, so the opening of Japan. Japan feared foreign influence, so it cut itself off from European trade in 1639, a long time ago. Japanese citizens were forbidden to travel to other countries, and foreigners were banned from coming to Japan, except for one city which actually had a Dutch outpost. They didn't fear the Dutch, so they allowed them to come in and trade. So the United States opens up Japan. So in 1853, the U.S. government sent a naval squadron commanded by the Commodore Matthew Perry to Japan. In addition to requesting better treatment for shipwrecked sailors, so what happens if you can't go to Japan? So if you were on a ship and you shipwrecked near Japan, then they put you in prison. So the Americans also wanted to, help these guys that have been shipwrecked, and they also wanted to develop new markets. Really, they wanted to develop new markets, and they wanted to establish a port where their ships could dock in Japan and then eventually go into China. Japanese leaders opened their doors to American trade out of fear of what had happened in China. So really, you come there with uh, a huge navy, and you just force Japan to come over. So within a few years, the British, the Russians, and the Dutch all negotiated similar favorable treaties with the Japanese. And these are some pictures of. Here's of course Matthew Perry, and then this is the way the Japanese, who had not seen very many Westerners, this is the way they drew. This is how they thought he looked. So they made him look as ugly as possible. All right, so the Japanese samurai and daimos, or their nobles, criticized the shogun, which was the actual Japanese ruler at that time. The shogun ruled, and the emperor was kind of just a puppet. And so they were upset at the shogun, who really controlled the country, for opening up Japan to the west. So, under this criticism, the shogunate, which was the government run by the shogun, it actually collapsed. And that leads to what the title was, the Meiji Restoration. So, the Japanese emperor, who had been a mere puppet for about 1,000 years, was suddenly restored to power. So, Emperor Meiji, the new ruler, was convinced that Japan had to adopt Western ways if it was going to escape future domination by Western powers. So what he did was kind of different. He sent scholars to other countries to learn advanced technologies and foreign customs, and he received visits from foreign ministers. So steamboats and railroads were built, and a new constitution was decreed or written. And it worked. So Japan became the first non-Western country to successfully copy and adopt Western ways, and eventually they get strong enough and advanced enough to get rid of the foreigners.